The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome into the Puck Portfolio. I'm your host, Andy MacNeil. I am here on weekdays here on the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel to provide NHL projections, picks, betting advice, and strategies. This show is sponsored by NorthStar Bets. You can check them out via the link in the description below, available to bettors across Canada. And on today's show, we are going to be having a special talk with Arthur Staple from The Athletic, who covers the New York Rangers and the Islanders. So we'll talk about both teams. Of course, the Rangers in action on Wednesday against the Columbus Blue Jackets, big 4-1 win. The Islanders in action tonight against the Red Wings in Detroit. And I don't quite get the market's love for the Islanders, but then again, I never really have. This team is 6-8 straight up since Patrick Roy took over, and they've only scored more than 3 goals in 3 out of those 14 games. People keep talking about their underlying numbers, and yeah, on aggregate, the Islanders are 51.6% in expected goal share since Patrick Roy took over as the head coach, and that looks kind of like a top 10 team, but the median expected goal share, if you look at them on a game-by-game basis, is around 47.5%, which is a lot closer to being a bottom 10 team. So Detroit, they are the 5th best team in goal scoring this season. The Islanders, they rank 23rd in goal scoring. Detroit is 16th in goals against this season. The Islanders are 22nd, so they've got an edge on New York there. Yeah, Detroit is playing above their heads, scoring more goals than you would expect based on the public models that we have here per Evolving Hockey. But the Red Wings have been doing it all season long. I don't think they're going to slow down anytime soon. So at minus 115, minus 120, like I gave out on Wednesday's show, I like the Detroit Red Wings on the money line to beat the New York Islanders. The Blue Jackets, they were in action last night in New York at MSG, losing 4-1 to the Rangers, as I said. And Johnny Gaudreau was injured in that game against the Rangers, so we'll have to find out more about his status heading into Thursday's tilt with the Hurricanes, but no word on whether or not that injury will be a long-term one at this time. The Golden Knights and the Bruins, still no word on whether Jack Eichel will be making his return to the lineup tonight or not. But Joseph Woll, the Maple Leafs goaltender who has not played since December 7th, is expected to make his return to the crease for the Maple Leafs tonight when they host the Arizona Coyotes, who have not won in 13 straight games. The Sabres, I've got a bet on Buffalo at plus 150. If you watch Wednesday's stream, you know that I locked in the Sabres at NorthStar Bets at plus 150, but Buffalo is now plus 135, which is right in line with my model. You see it on the screen right now. Andrei Vasilevsky is confirmed to start for the Tampa Bay Lightning. UPL Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is going to be in goal, or expected to be in goal. Next up, we've got the Montreal Canadiens. They're in Florida taking on the Panthers. Big underdogs, of course. Anthony Stolarz, though, will start for the Panthers, not Sergei Bobrovsky, and Samuel Montembeault will start for the Canadiens. The Dallas Stars made a huge splash on Wednesday, acquiring defenseman Chris Tanev from the Calgary Flames. Still unsure if Tanev will make his Stars debut on Thursday against the Winnipeg Jets, but either way, the Dallas defense is looking a whole lot more formidable heading into the playoffs. But without further ado, let's bring in Arthur Staple to talk some Rangers and Islanders and find out what he thinks of both these teams as we head into the trade deadline and maybe the playoffs, at least for the Rangers, but probably not for the Islanders. So let's get to that right now. All right, let's get to our chat with Arthur Staple from The Athletic. He covers the Rangers, a little bit of Islanders. Arthur, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, Andy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I first want to get your thoughts on the Rangers' big win over the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, I say big win because they did actually lose to the Blue Jackets the last time out. What did you think of the Rangers' performance on Wednesday? And I guess a two-part question. What do you see the Rangers doing as we approach the trade deadline here on March 8th?
You know, I think this is 11 wins in the last 12 games. So obviously they're doing a lot of things right. I think the main thing they're doing right is Igor Shesterkin seems to be back to 2021-22 form. I think he was 7-0 in February, 957 save percentage. And they really needed him because I don't think that their 5-on-5 game is really where they want it to be. Their power play has been scuffling a little bit too after being great the first couple of months of the year. So they're kind of a funny team. You know, the 10-1 run is obviously impressive. They've been doing a lot of things right. They've got Artemi Panarin, who's, you know, maybe get a couple of fifth place Hart votes, who's been up at the top of the leaderboard in terms of scoring this year. Adam Fox seems to be back from his injury that cost him 10 games earlier this season. He's looking pretty good. Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider. They've got their big boys doing what they need to do. And like I mentioned, Shesterkin, after a couple of mediocre months, is back to doing what he needs to be doing. But it's kind of a thin group. You've got some bottom six guys. There's a lot of hype around here over Matt Rempe. Kid comes up from the AHL, big 6'8" kid from out in Calgary, and seems to want to fight his way through like he's in the prison league or something. But didn't fight last night. Played a normal fourth line game. Was pretty decent.
I saw them try to contain him after that Gaudreau incident. They were trying to keep him out of the scrum, keep him away from everything.
Yeah, I think everybody's just trying to do. If he doesn't want to do what's best for him, because the shiner he had from the fight with Matthew Olivier from Sunday was pretty nasty looking. So I think
he needs a break
for all parties concerned for him to just play hockey for a little bit. But it's not a real deep Rangers group. They relied a lot, whether it was Shesterkin early in the year. Jonathan Quick's been really good as his backup. Shesterkin, like I said, back to form this last month. Their 5-on-5 numbers are pretty weak. And I think, for all of the good that guys like Panarin and Zibanejad and Vincent Trocheck, Alexei Lafreniere is having a good year, they still need to make some additions. So even with the record, first team to 40 wins, vying for President's Trophy, I think you're going to see them be pretty aggressive in the next week plus. Chris Drury this is his third trade deadline as GM. He was real aggressive the last two. They had a lot of cap space back in 2022, and he utilized it really well, getting guys like Frank Vetrano and Andrew Kopp, who were big keys to them getting to the conference final that year. Last year, maybe bit off a little more than they could chew. Got Vladimir Tarasenko in a big deal, and Nico Mikkola, and those guys really helped out, and then maybe got a little too greedy, went for a banged up Patrick Kane, and it kind of went a little bit south with the loss in the first round of the playoffs. So I don't think
they had waited until this season, because Patrick Kane looks great.
Yeah, they needed him to get his hip done. So I don't think they're going to shy away from doing anything. There's certainly guys out there that are available on the trade market. Guys like Adam Henrique in Anaheim. Ducks GM Pat Verbeek was at the Garden last night. His team is nowhere near the East Coast, so he was obviously checking some things out. Frank Vetrano, maybe a reunion with him, maybe another reunion with Vladimir Tarasenko, getting a guy to maybe play with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider on that top line, and really finding a third line center. Adam Henrique, depending on the cost, would really fit the bill. They've checked in on Scott Lawton in Philly. They've checked in on Yanni Gordon, Alex Wenberg in Seattle. There's a lot of options out there.
Great
I'm
pieces.
sure Chris Drury doing his due diligence now and waiting for prices maybe to drop a little bit, biding his time. They don't have a ton of cap space, but they've been creative in the past. So I think this team, they've been good. The results have been good, but I think Chris Drury and Peter Laviolette certainly understand there's a gap between where they are and where they probably think they could be. And certainly in the Eastern Conference, which, Florida maybe been the best team in terms of on paper and watching them play, and the Rangers are up there, but there's no real bona fide favorite. So I think the Rangers feel like if they can get these guys, you're getting guys maybe that some of your competitors want, and guys that can help them go a little bit further in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully wherever Frank Vetrano goes, he can take the water in Anaheim with him, because it's been doing wonders for him this season. And as far as Alexis Lafreniere goes, I thought it was kind of interesting. Last week when we had that situation where Artemi Panarin was dealing with an illness, wasn't sure if he was going to play or not, sportsbooks actually took down all the Alexis Lafreniere props, because they know this guy's going to get elevated in the lineup. And he did score 2 goals in that game. Actually. So yeah, he's had a great season, and he's been great for bettors too, because there have been some great opportunities to capitalize on him, being that big shot and that big scoring player that he has been. So moving on to the New York Islanders, the other team that you cover, I'm sure a little bit or not as enjoyable as covering the Rangers this season, but the Islanders, they're an interesting team nonetheless. Of course, they made the coaching change back on February 20th. But since then, they've gone 6-8 straight up in those 14 games. And I look at their underlying metrics, and a lot of people have been talking about their expected goals percentage per evolving hockey. The Islanders have a 51.6 expected goals percentage in all situations during this 14-game stretch under Patrick Waugh. But I think when you look at their median numbers on a game-to-game basis, they're down close to around 47.5%. So, where 51.5% would be maybe a top 10 team, or just on the cusp of being a top 10 team through the lens of expected goals, 47.5% is closer to being a bottom 10 team. So where do you think the Islanders are right now? I don't think they're a playoff team. I don't think they are on their way to being a playoff team. According to my projections, they've got about a 16% chance of making the NHL playoffs. So don't bet on the Isles to make the playoffs, in my opinion. What is plaguing this team, and what do you see happening throughout the rest of the season? Are they going to be sellers at the trade deadline, or is this team still committed to making the wild card race a little interesting here?
The thing that kind of cost Lane Lambert his job, outside of a historically bad penalty kill that's down around 71%, just blown leads. From a betting standpoint, I imagine when you see the Islanders go up 2 goals, you'd make out pretty well if you just bet threw $10 on the other team in the middle of, in an in-game live action, because they've blown, I think it's now 16 multi-goal leads this year. They've managed to win, I think, 6 or 7 of them, but so many lost points in games that they've been up, and it's hard to square the idea that they're a bad team with they're good enough to take these leads on some very good teams, and they just aren't able to hold on to it. They don't have an empty net goal yet this year. I think they'd be the first team in 15 years to go a whole season without an empty net goal.
Wow.
They're top 10 in terms of fewest minutes trailing in games. I think they're down around 16 minutes a game trailing, which, if you look at the teams that are around them, these are all teams that are safely in the playoffs, and they're the only ones that are out of it. The numbers are just very confounding with them this year. There are signs in a lot of places that they could be a playoff team and could be a team that could do some damage, and yet when you see the results and you see the way that they play, it's hard to quantify. It's a lot of intangible stuff, and Lou Lamoriello made the switch a little over a month ago, fired Lane Lambert, brought in Patrick Waugh, and the habits seem to still be there, that they can't pull away in games. They can't seem to come up with goals when they need them. When they fall behind, they give up goals in rapid succession. I think it's 17 times they've given up 2 goals within 2 minutes of each other in a game. Just a lot of numbers where you shake your head at a team that has some guys having great seasons. Matthew Barzal seems to be back to Calder Trophy season level, where he's averaging over a point a game. Bo Horvat has been a really good fit for them. Noah Dobson has taken a huge step forward this year. He's on pace, I think, for 70 assists, which, it's kind of numbers that get you into the conversation for a Norris Trophy. But the failings on the penalty kill, the failings with not being able to close out games and hold on to leads, it's kind of astonishing, the numbers that they've racked up, and the fact that by some standards, you said 16%. I think you'd look at what they've done and you'd say maybe it would be 1.6% with that, but 16,
maybe I looked at the sheet wrong this morning.
16 is a real number, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that teams around them, whether it's Jersey, Washington, Pittsburgh, even the teams that are in it, Philly, Tampa, nobody seems to really want to get a stranglehold on one of these last playoff spots. So, the Islanders are in Detroit tonight. That's a big 4-point game. They're one of the teams they're chasing, 10 points up, but still within shouting distance with 27, 28 games to go. Not a lot of faith that the Islanders could put together a run that would convince them to be buyers at the deadline next week. Lou Lamoriello is pretty much allergic to selling, and I think his commitment to the team, believing in this team, has shown in a lot of different ways, giving out some really unfortunate long-term contracts last offseason to guys like Scott Mayfield and Pierre Engvall, who haven't performed well at all this year. A lot of years left for Ryan Pulock and Adam Pelech, who have missed time with injuries and are getting older and a little bit more infirm. And really, they don't have a lot of other things to sell. As far as like pending UFAs, they've got guys like Cal Clutterbuck, who's been such a mainstay there for a long time on the 4th line. If he wanted to go, I guess you could maybe get a mid to low round pick for him. Oliver Wahlstrom, who's the 11th overall pick 6 years ago, seems like a guy who might need a change of scenery, but you're not going to get much for him. Really, the only guy you could see them getting a decent return for is Brock Nelson, who's got a year left at a $6 million cap hit, on pace for another 35-goal season. But that, to me, if you decide to make that move, you're signaling to your team and to the fans that this is going to be a long, slow turnaround. And I don't see Lou Lamoriello engaging at that at age 81, and with the commitments that he's made to Patrick Waugh, to to the guys on the roster. So there still seems to be some belief in that building that this is a good team and can do some damage. I think the evidence, like you were talking about, presents otherwise. So I get the feeling that between now and March 8th, it's going to be pretty quiet. We're just going to have to watch them try to figure it out, hold on to a lead, kill a penalty, see what they can do that they haven't been able to do this year.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I totally agree with you about the Islanders blowing leads early in the season, the fact that they could be in a much different situation now. But actually, since Patrick Waugh took over, they've spent quite a bit of time trailing. Only 8 teams have spent more time trailing than the Islanders since Waugh took over. So I do find that kind of interesting. And I find that a little bit of to be one of the reasons why their underlying metrics maybe do look a little bit better than I think they should, because they have been playing from behind in a lot of these games, especially when Waugh took over early in those early in those first handful of games. There were quite a few games where the Islanders would be trailing by multi goals after the first or second period in a lot of those games. So that definitely hurt them a little bit. But I'm on the Red Wings tonight against the Isles on the money line. I just think that given New York's challenges with offense, not scoring more than 3 goals in all but 3 games since Waugh has taken over, that's going to be tough against a Red Wings team that has shown a lot of offensive capabilities this season, and especially lately.
Yeah, I think the focus clearly has been on defending, trying to keep the shots and scoring chances against down, and I think they've succeeded. But the focus may be a little bit too much on that, where you
Yeah.
start to turn away from offense and not be able to kind of be cohesive in doing both. And yeah, I mean that's the sign of a mediocre team
Might
that they
might
can't.
have worked 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Might have got you somewhere. But I think in this league where offense is such a big driver, you're really kind of opening the door. You're leaving the door open to let the bad luck come in, and even in games where you may be the better team, if you're not able to really pull away offensively, there's going to be always be that chance that the team can tie it up and regain the lead, etc. And I think that's the Islanders' way. It's kind of a coin flip as to whether they're going to lose 3-2 or win 3-2 in each and every game, and that's what it feels like anyway.
Yeah, it's the way of the Islanders hockey. I think under Barry Trotz, they perfected the holding on to the lead part of it, and now it's just completely flipped, even with most of the same guys.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, Arthur. I really appreciate you joining me today. We'll have to do this again soon. You can check out all of Arthur's writing over at The Athletic. Some great Rangers and Islanders coverage over there. So check that out. And yeah, thanks again for taking the time today.
You got it, Andy. Thanks a lot.
Great stuff from Arthur. As always, you can check him out on Twitter at State Athletic. And of course, at The Athletic, he writes about the Rangers and the Islanders. Great coverage of both teams. Check him out on both platforms. But that does it for today's episode of the Puck Portfolio. Back on Friday with Nick Martin from the Line Change podcast over at the Action Network. We'll be breaking down Saturday's NHL odds before anybody else does. So tune in on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time here on the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel. Until then, good luck with your bets, and we'll see you on Friday.